First and foremost, I'd like to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rokah, Kwadash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone that rule well, and a sincere salutation to you, Akiminu, Akwat, that believe in all sincerity. So as you see here, states warn SNAP benefits may stop in November if government shutdown continues. This is on CBSnews.com. All right, check this out when you get a chance. But I'm going to read this article and get some precepts or warning. This will be edifying. It says states are warning struggling Americans who rely on food stamps to pay for groceries that they may miss out on benefits come November. Starting October 16th, SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program benefits will not be paid until the federal government shutdown ends and funds are released to PA. Reads a notice from the Pennsylvania State website. New Jersey, Maryland, New York, and Texas are among the other states that have issued similar notices. The wave of announcements come after the U.S. Department of Agriculture, which oversees the federal food stamps program, issued a letter to state agencies on October 10th, saying that if the lapse in appropriations continues, there will be insufficient funds to pay full November SNAP benefits. Reached for comment, the White House referred CBS News to the USDA, which then shared the letter it sent to states. Both declined to comment on what a lapse in funding could mean for the millions of Americans who rely on the program. Advocates, meanwhile, have warned that effects could be devastating. These are, for the most part, working individuals who still are living paycheck to paycheck, said Gina Platonino, interim director of SNAP at the Food Research of Action Center, a nonprofit focused on ending hunger. How SNAP benefits are normally administered. Over 40 million Americans have enrolled in SNAP. Recipients on average receive a payment of $187 or roughly $6 per day on prepaid cards that they can use to buy produce, meat, dairy, and other household food staples. While SNAP is a federally funded program run by the USDA, states are responsible for administering benefits and setting their own disbursement dates. As prescribed by the Food Research and Action Center on its website, the program is a delicate partnership of public and private entities. To ensure benefits are available at the first of every month, states send electronic case files with information on SNAP recipients on a monthly basis to an electronic benefit transfer vendor so they can process the data and load recipients' cards. EBT processors have to get all of this data in time, Platonino explained. They need to be able to process the payment so when the person utilizes their card at the EBT retailer, the money will be there for the retailer to be able to swipe. The shutdown, however, has thrown a wrench in the process. In its letter to state agencies on October 10th, the USDA directed states to hold off on sending electronic files to EBT vendors until further notice. The pause opens the door to possible delays and disruption in November benefits. Letting people go hungry is a choice, and it's not a good one. Deb Powers, a 66-year-old Massachusetts resident and SNAP recipient, told CBS News. It says contingency funding. One way for the USDA to cover SNAP costs, explained Platonino, would be for the agency to tap into its contingency funds. According to FRAC, the reserve stood at $6 billion during the Biden administration. After Democrats and Republicans failed to come to an agreement to extend government funding on October 1st, 2025, the USDA said in its lapse of funding plan that the SNAP program has been provided for with multi-layered contingency funds that could be used to cover state administrative expenses during a federal government shutdown. This multi-year contingency funds are also available to fund participant benefits in the event that a lapse occurs in the middle of the fiscal year, the plan states. However, it's unclear if the USDA plans to utilize those funds to ensure November SNAP benefits. The agency did not respond to CBS News' request for comment on whether that option is under consideration. During the government shutdowns in 2018 and 2019, the USDA dispersed SNAP funds early to prevent benefits from running out, Platonino said. This administration didn't do any of that this time, but they still have the contingency funding, Platonino said. They have the money, so it really is a policy choice. It is also possible states could attempt to free up money from their own budgets to bridge the gap, although approval would be an uphill battle given that its cost tens of hundreds of millions of dollars monthly to cover SNAP benefits. Whether states would get that money back is unclear. Okay. So, as you see, the federal government is still closed. Okay. And it's affecting the SNAP benefits. Now, they say that they have money, right? What does it say here? Contingency funding. One way for the USDA to cover SNAP costs would be for the agency to tap into its contingency funds, according to FRAC. The reserve stood at $6 billion during the Biden administration. They're even saying the states could bridge the gap. Okay, but it will cost tens of millions of dollars. Right. It's also possible states could attempt to free up money from their own budgets to bridge the gap, although approval would be an uphill battle, given that it costs tens of hundreds of millions of dollars. So, they got money for wars, but they can't feed the poor. All right. Once said by the late Tupac. All right. And it's true. It's interesting. We live in a country where, they really don't care about the citizens. There's many other governments that had, free health care and they help their citizens. But, we see that, America's not the same. America's not that place. Okay. What does it say here? How many, over 40 million Americans are enrolled in SNAP. 40 million Americans. And it said here in the article that for the most part, working individuals who still are living paycheck to paycheck, you see? Because here in the United States, a regular 40-hour job, a minimum wage 40-hour job is not enough to cover, housing for an individual. You really need two people to, hold down a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom apartment, let alone a house. So it's interesting that 40 million Americans are enrolled in SNAP. Okay. And these are, people that are working and living paycheck to paycheck. Okay. So, America's in a bad case. The average American citizen is in a bad case. You don't need no numbers. You don't got to do math. It is what it is. All right. This is, we'll start here in Isaiah. 30. Woe to the rebellious children, saith Yahweh, that take counsel, but not of me, and that cover with the covering, but not of my spirit, that they may add sin to sin. So, woe unto the rebellious children. Okay. And this is the city, they crucified the Lord. Okay. So we're basically living in a godless America. And the rebellious children, they take counsel, but they don't take counsel of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. They're of a different spirit where, that do as thou wilt, that America, home of the free and the brave, where you can basically do whatever you want. You make up the rules. You have the freedom to do this and do that, and they don't adhere by the laws, statutes, and commandments. Okay, and that's why it's a sinful nation. It says that walk to go down into Egypt and have not asked at my mouth to strengthen themselves in the strength of Pharaoh and to trust in the shadow of Egypt. And that's what these individuals do. They walk down to Egypt. They go down, complain about the SNAP, and they have not asked at the mouth of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, which is the prophets. But they want to strengthen themselves in the strength of Pharaoh. Okay. And America's likened it to Egypt because that's where the Israelites went into slavery. Well, they went into slavery again here in America. That's why America's likened it to Egypt. And the modern day Pharaoh or these so-called elites, these presidents like Donald Trump, so on and so forth. Therefore shall the strength of Pharaoh be your shame, and the trust in the shadow of Egypt your confusion. So, people think that America's the home of the free and the brave, but they're coming to find out that it's actually it's a shame. It's a shame. All right, the people, being lied to. All right, didn't who was it that just finished saying that America, make America great again? All right, they're saying that the jobs are at an all-time high. Well, if that's the case, why are 40 million Americans enrolled in SNAP? And that's just a rough estimate. There has to be more. It says, and the trust in the shadow of Egypt, your confusion. Right, people are going to be confused. They trust in Egypt, which is America, figuratively. People trust in oppression. They trust in this place, and they, people believe whatever is told to them. People are really stuck in the matrix. This is Proverbs 29:2. When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked beareth rule, the people mourn. And there was a lady coming out, it went viral, that she said she's gonna start stealing. All right, if the SNAP don't come in, she's gonna start stealing. You see, because people they're not used to not eating. All right, especially Americans. Americans are one of the more fattest countries of the world, right? People are overweight. You see, so this government shutdown, these SNAP benefits being affected, the ICE, okay, and the deportations, all this is culminating to something bigger, which is persecution. And Sweden has implemented the MOTB and different sources of gadgets you could use and stuff, ID cards and whatnot. Right? They're talking about this, man. The MOTB is coming, basically. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm getting at. All this is for the MOTB to be rolled out, COVID. Now, if you really look at it, COVID was just, a testing ground. It was an experiment to see, if they can get people to take the jump shot, if they can get people to lock it down, if they can get people to wear masks, and people, they complied. All right. And I just saw, that the U.S. Treasury is no longer issuing pennies. Now they're going to start giving people change down to the nearest nickel. Why? Because they want to get rid of the money. They want to get the digital dollar rolling, which is the MOTB, basically. Proverbs 29:2. When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice, but when the wicked beareth rule, the people mourn. People are mourning. People are mourning. People are starting to see, all right, to a certain degree, that they've been bamboozled here in America. This is a nightmare. All right, they feed you lies. They feed you a doctrine that people take it. They run with it, and only to be pierced with many sorrows, only to be living a life of sin, a life of evil, a life of wickedness, a life against Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. It's all of this American doctrine. People are drinking the juice. People are drinking the juice, man. They're drinking the Kool-Aid, man, and getting hypnotized by it. Psalms 146:3. Put not your trust in princes, nor in the Son of Man, in whom there is no help. Yeah, stop putting your trust in Donald Trump. And look at what they did to that dude. They shot him in his neck, man. Straight up. They shot that guy in his neck. I forget his name right now. He went against the system. He was probably, if I'm not mistaken, he was talking about the small hat, big nose people, the you-ish people, and they shot him in his neck. Why do you think they're doing that? Because you can't go against the system. But put not your trust in princes, nor in the Son of Man, in whom there is no help. They're not going to help you. They're not. This is all leading to a siege. Okay? They want to siege Jerusalem. That's an act of war, to cut off a nation's food supply. When a country goes to war against another country, that's one of the greatest tactics. Cut off the medicine, cut off the food source, starve the people out. Let sicknesses run rampant, let people get sick, let disease spread. You know, besides just, you know, physical warring and bombing and shooting at each other, that's what they do. You see? And people are going to come to find out real quick what America's all about. All right? Here it is. They trust in this place. They trust in the philosophy. They trust in, you know, in Esau. They trust in all this wickedness, and they're gonna find themselves that they leaned on that staff that was a broken reed, and they pierced themselves through. They leaned on the stick, and it went right through their hand. I want to read this. This is Leviticus. This is talking about the welfare system that we had, you know. Leviticus 19:9. And when ye reap the harvest of your land, thou shalt not wholly reap the corners of thy field, neither shalt thou gather the gleanings of the harvest. It says here, when you harvest the crops of your land, do not harvest the grain along the edges of your fields, and do not pick up the harvester's drop. You see? So at the edge of the field, you know, there was a little section where when it was time to harvest the grain, they would leave it. Or if anything fell, they would leave it. All right? It says 10, and thou shalt not glean the vineyard, neither shalt thou gather every grape of the vineyard. Thou shalt leave them for the poor and stranger. I am Yahweh your power. Okay? NLT, it is the same with your grape crop. Do not strip every last bunch of grapes from the vines, and do not pick up the grapes that fall to the ground. Leave them for the poor and the foreigners living among you. I am Yahweh your power. You see? There was like a welfare system that, you know, they helped the poor, even strangers. You see? That's humanity. All right? You leave some food from the harvest so people can eat. But these devils, man, they're in power. You know, that article said they can tap into a reserve of money. Okay, that'll be able to back the SNAP payments, but they won't. All right, because they don't give a damn about you, Jakes, you so-called blacks, Latinos, Native Americans. They don't care. You know, they don't even care about their own people. That's another thing too. They're saying that the majority of people that are on SNAP are Edomites. Dig that. I bet you didn't know that. And here they call you the lazy, uneducated. You know, all you do is make babies and do drugs and drink, and, you know. But more than half of the people that receive SNAP are actually Edomites. This is Deuteronomy chapter 24:19. When thou cuttest down thine harvest in thy field, and hast forgot a sheaf in the field, thou shalt not go again to fetch it. It shall be for the stranger, for the fatherless, and for the widow. And Yahweh thy power may bless thee in all the work of thine hands. You see? Yeah. When you cut down the harvest in the field, hey, if you forget something in the, hey, don't go back and get it. Leave it for the stranger. Leave it for the widow. See, the Lord will bless you for that. Okay. This is Deuteronomy 15:17. If there be among you a poor man of one of thy brethren within any of thy gates in thy land, which Yahweh thy power giveth thee, thou shalt not harden thy heart nor shut thine hand from thy poor brother. Okay? Let me read that again. I'm getting a phone call. If there be among you a poor man of one of thy brethren within any of thy gates in thy land, which Yahweh thy power giveth thee, thou shalt not harden thy heart nor shut thine hand from thy poor brother. You see? Now, is not Esau Jacob's brother? But yet he shuts his hand. It says NLT, but if there be any poor Israelites in your towns, when you arrive in the land the Lord your power is giving you, do not be hard-hearted or tight-fisted toward them. You see? But thou shalt open thy hand wide unto him, and shalt surely lend him sufficient for his need in that which he wanteth. You see? You should lend to him, man. Sufficient for his need and that which he wanted, whatever he wants, as much as he needs, man. Give it to him. That's how we were in the ancient world. We had a welfare system. You know, we gave freely. See? But look at what, you know, where we live. Here in America, man. You know, this devil, you know, he's you know, what did we read? You know, they can tap into the reserve, you know, money, but it's all a policy. The administration didn't do any of that, but they still have the contingency funding. They have the money, so it really is a policy choice, you see? Yeah. It's the type of place we live in, man. Politics over humanity. You know, it's supposed to be the best country in the world, so to speak, but it's not. You know, people need to open their eyes and really see how crooked, you know, how perverse, you know, how hypocritical this nation really is, man. You know, it was built on the backs of you so-called blacks, Latinos, Native Americans. That's the truth of the matter. Other countries know it. It's you Israelites that, you know, that are blind to see, you know, who your enemy is. All right. This is Deuteronomy 10 and 17. It says, for Yahweh your power is the most high. Oh, I'm gonna just read it verbatim. For Yahweh your power is the power of powers and Lord of lords, and a great power, a mighty and terrible, which regardeth no persons nor taketh reward. He doth execute the judgment of the fatherless and widow, and loveth the stranger, in giving him food and raiment. Okay. Yeah. So the Lord loves it when we give our, you know, Israelite foreigners food and raiment. Right? People that are sojourning in the land or passing by. Yeah. But he execute judgment of the fatherless and the widow, and loveth the stranger, in giving him food and raiment. We're strangers in this land. You think our brother would open his hand wide and give us what we want and what we need? Nah, he won't. You see? But the Lord does. He likes that. He executes judgment for the fatherless and the widow. You know? How dwelleth the love of the Most High in these devils, man? It don't. You know? So check this out. If you got time. There's a video. This article on CBS News. Lord, when you were edified, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim Rokak, Kwadash. Double honors to the apostles and the others of Great Millstone that rule well. And a sincere salutation to you, Akim, and you Aqua, to believe in all sincerity. Shalom.